Hey guys, welcome to Top Tabletop. I'm Gab Zúñiga, and today I will show you how to play Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is a semi-cooperative game for 2 to 5 players, where you are survivors in the zombie apocalypse during a harsh winter, and you are trying to fulfill the objective of your colony as a group, but everyone also has an individual secret objective, and one of you might even be a betrayer. The components are 1 colony board, 6 location boards, 5 player sheets, 30 survivors and survivor cards, 10 main objective cards, 24 secret objective cards, 10 betrayal objective cards, 10 exiled objective cards, 20 crisis cards, 80 crossroads cards, 145 item cards, a bunch of tokens, wounds, helpless survivors, noise, barricades, food, and starvation. Lots of zombies and zombie tokens in case you run out of zombies. 30 action dice, 1 exposure die, 2 track markers, and a first player token. We will set up a 4-player game. Place the colony board and the location boards. Pick one main objective and place it on its spot on the board. The main objectives have different setups, victory conditions, and duration. For your first game, it's suggested to choose the "We need more samples" objective. Set the board according to the objective. In this case, set the morale at 6 with the blue marker, the round also at 6 with the red marker, and add 1 zombie to all non-colony locations. Shuffle the crisis cards and place them on their spot on the board. Everyone takes a player sheet. Randomly, take 2 secret objectives per player and add 1 betrayal objective. Shuffle them, give 1 to each player, and return the rest to the box. Players look at their card in secret, maybe there's a betrayer, or maybe not. Shuffle the starter item cards and deal 5 to each player. Return any remaining cards to the box. Separate the other item cards according to their location. Shuffle them and place them in their corresponding place. Each player gets 4 survivor cards and chooses 2 to keep. All the survivors have different values and different abilities, so players should choose the survivors that will be more helpful to complete their secret objective. After choosing 2 cards, the other 2 are returned to the deck and it's shuffled. Take all the corresponding survivors and place them at the colony. Each player chooses one of their survivors to be the leader of their group and places it in its space, and all other survivors will be the followers. Keep all the remaining components nearby. The player whose leader has the highest influence, which is the top right number, takes the first player token, and the game is ready to begin. The game is played in rounds, and each round is divided in 2 phases, the player turns phase and the colony phase, which are detailed in the player sheets. The player turns phase has 3 steps. The first step is revealing the top crisis card, which has a negative effect that will happen if the crisis is not prevented. The second step is rolling the action dice. Each player receives 1 die plus 1 extra for each of their survivors. So, the first turn, everyone gets 3 dice. Everyone rolls their dice, and they're placed on the unused dice spot. The last step is the player turns. Starting with the first player, everyone will take a turn in clockwise order. At the beginning of your turn, the player to your right draws a Crossroads card, and then you take your turn. We will check the Crossroads cards later on. There are many actions you can do on your turn. Some require dice and some don't. First, we will see the actions that don't require dice and you can do for free. Play a card. You can play as many cards as you want and apply their effect. After using a card, if it says waste pile, it's placed on its spot on the colony. If it says equip, it's equipped to a survivor. And if it says event, it's discarded. Add cards to the crisis. The crisis requires certain type of cards to be prevented. You can add as many cards as you want, placing them on their spot, and they can be from your hand or cards equipped to your survivors. When you add cards from your hand, they're placed face down so no one can see what you added. Move a survivor. Each survivor can be moved only once per turn, and they can move anywhere as long as there is a survivor space available in that location. Every time you move a survivor, you need to roll for exposure afterwards, using the exposure die. There are 4 possible outcomes when rolling for exposure. If you get a blank, nothing happens. If you get a wound, the survivor takes 1 wound token. If you get a frostbite, the survivor takes a frostbite token, which also counts as a wound, but additionally, at the beginning of each of your turns, a survivor with a frostbite token takes another wound. And finally, if you get the bite, the survivor is bitten and is immediately killed. And on top of that, if there are other survivors in the location you were bitten, the bite effect spreads to the survivor with the lowest influence, and the player controlling that survivor has 2 options: killing the survivor, therefore stopping the bite effect from spreading further, or rolling the exposure die. On a blank result, the survivor is not killed and the bite effect stops, but with any other result, the survivor is killed and the bite effect spreads again. The bite effect will keep spreading until someone either sacrifices their survivor with option 1 or rolls a blank with option 2, or until there are no more survivors at that location. Spend food tokens. You will mostly get food tokens from cards. You need them to feed the colony, but you can also spend them to increase an unused die by 1 for each token. Request. You can request cards from other players. Any player can give you a card from their hand, but you have to play it immediately and apply its effect, and it cannot be added to the crisis. Hand off. You can hand off equipped cards to another survivor at the same location, and they equip it immediately. Vote to exile. You can initiate a vote to exile another player. All players cast a vote at the same time with a thumbs up or thumbs down to determine whether the player is exiled. Ties are broken by the first player. We will see what happens if a player is exiled later on. Now we will see the actions that require dice. Attack. In order to attack, you need to spend a die equal to or higher than your survivor's attack value, and you can attack a zombie or a survivor at your location. If you attack a zombie, you kill it, it is removed, and then you must roll for exposure. If you attack a survivor, you must roll the spent action die. The attack only succeeds if the result is equal to or lower than the attack value of the survivor you're attacking, in which case they take a wound and you take a random card from that player's hand. You cannot attack your own survivors, and when you attack a survivor, you don't have to roll for exposure. You can attack as many times as you want, but you need to spend the appropriate die for each attack. Search. You can spend a die equal to or higher than your survivor's search value to search your location. You draw a card from that deck and you have 2 options: keep that card or make noise, which you do by placing a noise token on an empty space on that location to draw another card. You can keep making noise and drawing more cards as long as there are noise spaces available. When you're done, you must keep only one of the drawn cards and place the rest at the bottom of the deck. You can search multiple times, but you will need the appropriate die for each search. Each location shows item symbols in the upper right. The order from left to right is the likelihood of finding that type of item at that location. Barricade. You can spend 1 die of any result to place a barricade on an empty entrance space at your location. Clean waste. If you have a survivor at the colony, you can spend 1 die of any result to remove 3 cards from the waste pile, removing them from the game. Attract. You can spend 1 die of any result to attract 2 zombies from any location to empty spaces at your location. All survivors have different abilities. Some can be used anywhere, some are used at specific locations, and some require a die, indicated by a number. In those cases, you can also use a die to perform the ability. Once a player takes all the actions they want, their turn ends, and the next player takes their turn, starting with the player to their right taking a Crossroads card. These cards contain situations that only happen if a specific condition is met. For example, if the active player takes a certain action, if a specific survivor is at play, or if there's more than one player at a certain location, and the player who drew the Crossroads card must keep this requirement hidden. They secretly read the starting text in italic, which is the trigger condition, and as soon as the condition is met, they announce it and they read the card out loud. The card will describe the situation. Some of them will give options to choose from, and the active player must choose one, and some will require everyone to vote. After choosing or voting, the effects are resolved and the card is discarded. If a Crossroads card is not triggered during the turn, place it at the bottom of the deck. When all players have taken their turns, the colony phase begins following these steps. Pay food. For every 2 survivors at the colony, including helpless survivors, and rounded up, remove 1 food token from the supply. If there's not enough food, you don't remove any tokens, but you must add a starvation token and reduce morale by 1 for each starvation token currently present in the food supply. Check waste. Count the cards in the waste pile. For every 10 cards, rounded down, reduce morale by 1. Resolve crisis. Shuffle the cards that were added face down to the crisis and reveal them one at a time. Each card that has a symbol matching a symbol that prevents the crisis adds 1 point. Each card with a different symbol subtracts 1 point. If the total is lower than the number of non-exiled players, you fail to prevent the crisis and its effect is resolved. But if the total is equal or higher, the crisis is prevented and its effect is ignored. Additionally, if the total exceeds the number of non-exiled players by 2 or more, the colony gains 1 morale. After resolving the crisis, remove those cards from the game. Add zombies. In the colony, for every 2 survivors, including helpless survivors and rounded up, add 1 zombie. When adding zombies to the colony, always place the first zombie on any empty space in entrance 1, the second zombie on any empty space in entrance 2, and so forth. If you add more than 6 zombies, start back in entrance 1 again. In all other locations, add 1 zombie for every survivor. One at a time, remove each noise token at a location and flip it like a coin. If it lands on the exclamation side, add a zombie. If there are no empty spaces where a zombie needs to be placed, but there is a barricade, it stops the zombie. Destroy the barricade and remove the zombie. If there are no empty spaces and no barricades, the entrance has been overrun. The survivor with the lowest influence in that location is killed, and the zombie is removed. If the colony is overrun and there are only helpless survivors, kill a helpless survivor. If a location is overrun but there are no survivors, just remove the zombie without any effect. Check main objective. Check if the main objective is completed. If it's not, the game continues. Move round tracker. Move the round tracker 1 space down. Pass first player token. The first player passes the first player token to the player on their right, and a new round begins. Some game effects will cause players to add a new survivor to their following. New survivors are placed at the colony, including helpless survivors. Players may use the new survivor during their turn, but they won't get an additional action die for it until the next player turns face when the action dice are rolled. If there are no empty survivor spaces at the colony, the players cannot play item cards or trigger Crossroads cards that would add survivors, including helpless survivors. When a survivor has 3 or more wounds of any kind, it is killed. When a survivor is beaten, it is killed. When zombies overrun a location, a survivor is killed. And there are some card effects that may kill a survivor. When a survivor is killed, it's removed from the game along with its card, and morale is reduced by 1. Its die is not lost until the next roll dice phase. If a helpless survivor is killed, it is removed, and morale is also reduced by 1. If a survivor is killed at the colony and it had any cards equipped, those cards are added to its player's hand. If a survivor is killed at any other location, its equipped cards are shuffled into that location's item deck. If a group leader is killed, the player must choose a survivor from their following and make it the new leader. If a player's last survivor is killed, that player discards their entire hand, removing the cards from the game. They draw a new survivor card and add that survivor to the game, making it their new leader. If there is a vote and a player is exiled, the exiled player draws one exiled secret objective card. This will adjust their secret objective and give them a new one depending if they were the betrayer or not. The exiled player must move all of their survivors to non-colony locations of their choice, following all the normal rules for movement, except this move does not count as the one move survivors are allowed to make during their turn. The exiled player is no longer part of the colony, they can't move there, they can't add cards to the crisis, they can't vote, and the colony does not lose morale when an exiled survivor is killed. The exiled player cannot spend food tokens to increase their action dice, but they may play food cards to increase an action die by 1 for each food card played rather than applying the effect of the card. When the exiled player plays a card, instead of going to the waste pile, it's removed from the game. If the exiled player adds a new survivor to their following, it is placed at a non-colony location of their choice, and if they had to add helpless survivors to the colony, they are not added. Important: if at any point there are 2 exiled players and none of them was a betrayer, morale immediately drops to 0. The game can end in a couple of ways. During the colony phase, in the step where the main objective is checked, if it has already been completed, the game ends. Or, if either the round track or the morale track reach 0, the game ends immediately. If a player's secret objective is completed when the game ends, they win the game, if not, they lose. This means that everyone could win, or there might be only some winners, and it's even possible for everyone to lose if no one completed their secret objective. The game has some variants. You can choose harder main objectives, you can play without secret objectives, and you can increase the chance of having a betrayer. So if you wanna shake things up, you can check them out. And that's how you play Dead of Winter. Come back after playing and tell me in the comments how you liked it. And if the video was helpful, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you on the next video.